The Connor. Let's get back to the Connor Happer Show on 1620 The Zone.
Here comes the clown.
Wow, look at this. Famous explorer Ferdinand Magellan is here in the chat today.
Hi, Ferdinand.
Is this the same person who is Albert Pujols? Remember, every once in a while, Albert Pujols pops into the chat. I really like this idea that our chat is just a collection of people throughout the history of time and not actual real people. It's just burners of people who want to be named Ferdinand Magellan.
Yeah,
or
I'm
Albert
okay with
Pujols.
that.
Yeah, I think that's really funny. Like if our chat was just full of that for an entire show,
Like
I would
Abraham
laugh.
Lincoln,
Yeah.
JFK.
I would laugh hysterically.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. Like Pete Rose showed up, had some takes on the things that are going on with Nebraska football and stuff like that. I think that'd be fun. Ferdinand Magellan writes in, who is Albert Pujols? That makes sense that Magellan wouldn't know who Albert Pujols was.
Yeah, they didn't live at the same time.
Let's screenshot that one. Put that one up on the old No Context 1620, where you could see the best from mostly our YouTube chat.
It's good stuff.
There's some stuff that goes in there. All right. Scott Frost.
We're doing this.
We are. I don't see any problem with it. I'd like to.
Have you listened to the audience's comments?
Do they not?
Why do you always have to talk about Scott Frost? What? Let it go. Let it go.
I'll tell you what.
Let it go.
I heard less of that yesterday. I heard less of that yesterday because what happened yesterday was it's one thing for him to glance by it and not talk about it. It's that, hey, look, man, that other place,
Here to talk about UCF.
I don't want
to talk about
right. And then we could have thoughts on that. It's weird. It's weird that he just won't say the word Nebraska, seemingly in a super public format. But this one was a little bit more than that yesterday. So he shows up at Big 12 Media Days, and he's at the podium yesterday, which, by the way, Big 12 Media Day is going on today. We're waiting on an appearance from Deion Sanders. I hope he's there. I don't know what's going on with Deion. Nothing's crossed my timeline regarding Coach Prime today, who decided to bring 2 quarterbacks to Big 12 Media Days, interestingly enough. But anyway,
Do you know something?
We'll keep. I just hope that he's there. Like, there's been questions about his health and stuff like that.
Well, yes. And we do wish him the best.
Yes, I just wonder if he's there. I hope he's there. So do a quick Twitter search for Deion Sanders and see if he's there. Josh, I don't know the answer to that. But let's talk about what happened yesterday. Anything happened at Big 12 Media Days? Yes. UCF is in the Big 12. Scott Frost is the coach again at UCF. He doesn't say much in his press conference, and he doesn't want to drudge up old stuff. And so then how it works at these conference media days, just to give you guys a full sense of what it sort of looks like, is major publications or ESPN or Fox, like rights holders, TV rights holders for the conference, will have separate rooms where they'll put their reporters or people who ask questions, or cameras. Fox will do a bunch of bits from throughout the season, like, it's Military Appreciation Day or something like that, and then they'll have a coach or what's your favorite kind of sandwich, or who's your favorite NFL team, or something like that, right? And they'll have them record all those things. So Fox will have a room, and ESPN will have a room, and NBC, and in this case, The Athletic, which is where a couple of the athletic reporters were stationed, and they go, and each of the coaches go through, and they ask him various questions about whatever they'd like to ask about. Scott Frost hopped in, and so this is kind of off to the side. I don't know if that's important, but it's context that I'd like to add to the conversation. Of course, back at UCF, big storyline with him after his treacherous run at Nebraska. People forget he went 16-31, Josh. Difficult to imagine a Nebraska coach going 16-31, but we lived it.
Because almost no one has ever.
Yep. One of the worst in Nebraska football history in terms of a winning percentage. Then spent 2024 as an analyst with the Los Angeles Rams. and before taking the job at UCF after Gus Malzahn leaves in the off season. Quote, he told The Athletic, "I didn't want to leave UCF." This is referring to back in 2017 when we were going through, you really think about it. I mean, it was a crazy time period. Scott Frost is orchestrating an undefeated season with UCF, and meanwhile, Nebraska is plummeting to the core of the earth under Mike Riley. It's very clear that he's going to be fired. Nebraska has a very public pursuit of Scott Frost. They wanted to keep it private. They wanted to be respectful of all these things, but it was difficult because he was so front and center the candidate for the job, which is an interesting part of this conversation that we'll end up probably discussing in a moment. Now, Frost, upon his return to UCF, says, quote, "I didn't want to leave UCF," talking about the first time. "I always said I would never leave unless it was someplace you could go and potentially win a national championship. Period. I got tugged in a direction to try and go help my alma mater, and I didn't really want to do it. It wasn't a good move. I'm lucky to get back to a place where I was happier." And then he was asked what he learned, or actually, I'm not, to be fair, I'm not exactly sure what he was asked to get this response, but he did say, quote, "Don't take the wrong job. That's what I learned. Make sure you're working for and around good people." Obviously, Nebraskans caught wind of this yesterday and were like, "Wait a minute, excuse me?
Okay.
What happened here?" So I want to be clear on how I feel about this first. So yesterday we had this discussion on the show when the quotes were starting to come out, and actually I think we had this discussion prior to him actually talking. Like I think you asked me, Josh, am I rooting for him?
Yes, I did at some point.
I am
yesterday.
rooting for him. And people are like, blasphemy. Why would you root for him? Here's why. And it also doubles as the reason why I'm not mad at him for throwing shade at Nebraska. Obviously, this is the reason why people take offense to it, right? Wait a minute. Nebraska's not a good job? That's your takeaway from your time at Nebraska? It's not a good job? You weren't surrounded by good people? That says something about Nebraska. You're trying to say something about Nebraska. I'm not at all I'm not offended by that. And I can understand why Scott Frost would see that and feel that way, because to get back to the main point, he seems incapable of understanding some of the missteps that he took outside of obviously what he thought was taking the job in the first place in retrospect. So am I rooting for him? Sure. Why? Because I want him to mature. I want him to take ownership. I believe in the good of people, right? I want to I want some humility, and I want for this person to be able to say out loud one day, maybe there will still be a day, although it does not seem like we're trending this way, Josh. Maybe there will be a day where he'll say, "Gosh, you know what? No, it wasn't a great situation for me. And no, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And no, maybe I shouldn't have left in the first place. But man, I didn't know a lot of things when I took the Nebraska job. I was young. I was naive. We had just coming off an undefeated season. I thought I knew everything about everything. And this was definitively a different situation. And it was hard, and I didn't adjust well." I would love for him to say that.
That's very mature of you.
It would be a very mature thing to say. And it really isn't even taking full responsibility. It's just acknowledging the idea that it's not just other factors that led to what Scott Frost's 16-31 record at Nebraska. I would like a little bit of an acknowledgement that it was at least partially, most people around here would say exclusively, but at least partially due to his own undoing, his own missteps as the head coach at Nebraska. I I wish I would have handled some things better. I wish I would have done some things better. I wish I would have entered the job with a little bit more humility. I would, whatever it might be, whatever the takeaway might be. That's why I'm rooting for him, because I want him to have that realization one day, because I think it'd be peaceful for everybody. I think it'd be a great thing for everyone to just say, you know what? It was hot. It was a time where he was the hottest coach in the country, and Nebraska was at this very, very low point. They're trudging through 2017, getting blasted by basically everybody they play. The team is laying down and rolling over. Like, it was a highly combustible situation in the first place. And that wasn't a great place for him to walk into, with a lot of expectations, mind you. That's not a great place for him to walk into. And he thinks he's on top of the world at this point. I am not mad at him because he said things about Nebraska, and I feel the weird need to blindly defend Nebraska at all turns.
Yeah. No, that's not what this is.
We've admitted our, like, I think some people are, though.
Yes.
Some people are. Some people see this and like, that's it. He said something about Nebraska. I'm officially done with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about that. I am mad, in a fatherly way. I am more disappointed that
you hear that, Scott?
Yeah, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. That really would sum up my feelings on this situation actually quite well. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. There have been so many opportunities for him to just say it out loud one time. Like, you know what? I could have done a little bit better. I wish I would have done some things differently. But he's never even been mildly intrigued in taking that road before. And yes, it makes him really, really difficult to root for. Yes, it's really hard to hear, because he's putting all of everything that went wrong during that time and during his time here, during the time in which he's transitioning jobs and throughout his time here, on external things. You got to work around, you got to have a good job. You got to take the right job. You got to have the right people around you. Like, seriously? That's probably all true. You do. There's a lot of things, frankly, that have to go right in order for it to work.
Right.
And no, yes, he had a lot of bad breaks when he was here as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't understand how years later, we are now years later, where he can't just understand, like, wow, yeah, it was all that, and I am ultimately the person who has to pay for all this. And he's paid a dear, dear price, because I think I don't know if he loves his alma mater, but I think he definitely feels emotional toward he wanted it to work. He wanted it to work. And he thought
I believe that to be the case. Yes.
He thought it was going to work. He was sure, everyone was sure that it was going to work. So he's paid a price. And the price is that he is absolutely and completely burned this bridge in this relationship that he's had with his home state. And that's I think, like, I just like to see people grow and mature. And we just haven't seen that. And I hope, maybe he goes on in his career at UCF and they win, and this feels like, and the commentary is, gosh, I guess he was right. Nebraska is just a screw job. Nebraska is just a bad place. Nebraska is just where coaches go to die, because he'll be able to say that. He'll be able to say that if they win at UCF. But I don't think it's 100% the truth. And I hope that somewhere deep down inside, he's had a point of reflection during these last 5+ years as it wasn't working, and then and then he was fired. To be like, gosh, I just could have really handled a lot of those things differently. But that hasn't come out of his mouth. And it's been the exact opposite. And that's the hard thing.
It's a very nice sentiment, Connor. Very
Whoa,
nice.
Josh. Oh, no.
Very nice.
Oh, no. What are you doing?
I believe it was 24 hours ago on this show, I said that I, too, was still rooting for Scott Frost.
And now you're dead. Now you're out.
Not anymore.
Yep.
I think I've been able to, in the last 24 hours, look at this on a macro level.
Yeah.
Scott Frost is the captain of the football team when you were in high school that showed up to class hungover and stupid, and everyone just kind of let him on through the whole time without like sitting him down and going, no, you're a bleep up and you need to stop being a bleep up, or there's real consequences for your actions.
But what if he wins?
Then
what if he's the star quarterback and he keeps winning?
He keeps failing up regardless of his own self-actions.
What if he keeps being the big man on campus and he comes to class and he looks like a disaster and all of those things, and everyone's like, who is this guy and how does he keep doing it, but he keeps winning?
LLH on YouTube, Frost succeeding won't humble him, though. It will do the opposite. It will do the exact
100%.
opposite.
100%.
If he wins at UCF this round, then he gets to be, well, yep, I just need to be happy where I'm working. And, I'm doing it all by myself. Boy, if you were doing it by yourself at Nebraska, according to some of the reporting, nobody was trying very hard at Nebraska. And that may very well be the case. But my gosh, I'm tired of watching this man have no consequences for his actions, and he keeps failing up and winning despite himself when he thinks it's in spite of himself, or however.
You think it is because of himself?
Yeah.
Because of himself.
Yeah. Like, bleep that guy. And it's not a you disrespected the N, man. I don't care about that.
Okay, good.
I'm tired when jerks win. I'm tired when the buttheads win. Like, we can't keep giving this guy chance after chance after chance. For what? Because he fell ass backwards into talent in Orlando. Because you can do that there.
Yeah, I mean they weren't very good. They went winless famously 2 years before he went undefeated.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. I mean he there is a good coach in there somewhere. There's a good coach in there. Something works somewhere, right? I don't think it's luck. I don't. Now, if you play the 2017 season over 45 times or 100 times, I don't think he goes undefeated every single time.
Yeah.
No, they won a lot of great games that year. Really memorable. And they just had that magic. They had that special something.
Now,
a lot of people have said over the years, well, what if he just goes 9-3 that year? He doesn't come into Nebraska with quite as much. Nebraska probably still, let's just say Nebraska still hires him.
I would think so.
He doesn't come in with as much fanfare and he probably still thinks he owns the world, but maybe not as much. Does that change his worldview coming into Nebraska? I don't know. But that's the whole point. That's what we're talking about. Like, it's all what he sees in his eyes is obviously different from reality. And that is just like, it's hard for me to understand. It's hard for me to fathom. But you're right, Josh. At some point, if you do it enough times, and it's not just this time, and it's all the other times, it's the time where he left and he came back, and the first time at Nebraska with Stanford, and had a lot of people to blame, and a lot of people still had this adversarial relationship with the fan base. As always, hey, look, they benched me, they booed me. He talked about it nonstop at his time at Nebraska as it pertained to Adrian Martinez, and he was like, hey, look, at the quarterback you get too much credit and you get too much blame. I know that. He talked about it nonstop. He talked about it constantly. It's his only worldview. It obviously fuels and drives him in some way, shape, or form, but he uses that energy and he channels it in such a weird way.
Very weird.
It's such a weird way.
He's a brat. He's a petulant child. But I will meet him halfway in that clearly I think he knew something ahead of the Nebraska job that we didn't see. That
I don't know, man.
I don't want that. That's a lot of pressure. That's a pressure cooker I don't want.
I still balk at the idea. I still balk at the whole, he never wanted this job in the first place. It's really easy to say that now.
Okay, you maybe playing the result. And
I know how hard it was for him to leave there. And that story's been told a million times.
I'm sure he knew his work ethic and the fishbowl.
He thought he could do it.
Mm-hmm.
He thought he could do it, and he wanted to lay his own rules, and he wanted to do it his way, and everyone was going to allow him to do that. He was given all of the leash possible. You want a boss who's never going to talk to you and never going to be there? Sure, fire away. You want to run the athletic department basically the way you want it? Sure. You want to run the practices the way you want to run them? Absolutely. You want 190 guys on your roster?
All of them puking their guts out?
Yeah, to build it like you did in the 90s? Sure. fire away. There was a lot of sacrifices that Nebraska as a university had to make because they hired Scott Frost as their head coach. So just an acknowledgement of that would be fantastic. It'd be fantastic. But it's that's not how he sees it.
I think to get there, life has to humble him for
Well,
not the first time.
You would
but
think that he got humbled. He sucked horribly at Nebraska. It went 16-31. They were awful, and he still hasn't humbled nothing.
God, you're right there. Gosh, almost humbled him out of the
He
game.
took the job. All right. So to go back now and say he didn't want the job or it was never good for him in the first place, I just can't completely sign off on that. That just feels like a little bit of, hindsight to me. Playing the result.
It is pretty convenient. Yeah.
All right. Text from you all. Jeff writes in.
Hi, Jeff.
Dude acts like we handcuffed him and forced him to sign that contract, that massive contract.
Well, maybe his agent did.
He could have gone anywhere.
I need 10%.
He could have gone anywhere and he could have stayed there.
Yeah. He could have been the coach of UCF for life.
Nobody made him.
Yeah.
He was tugged.
He was tugged.
He was tugged.
Now, granted, at the time, UCF wasn't a power school, and he was like, I need to get to a power school. I need to.
No, there was a thought
upgrade.
hey, if I don't take this now, when am I ever going to do it? Am I going to have the opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
But the timing felt right at the time. For the 402.
Hi, 402.
If he didn't work around good people at Nebraska, it's because he brought his whole coaching staff with him. Boy. And then you saw those relationships sour right away. I mean, Greg Austin was his right-hand man, and then then by 2 years in, they didn't even talk to each other. They all hated him.
That is an excellent point.
From the 402.
Maybe that's more of what he was saying. In
the people that he brought with him were bad people?
Yeah.
That won all those games at UCF? From the 402, Connor, S. Frost is an a-hole. What a slap. Hopefully he fails tremendously. From the 402, give it up, Connor. Guy's a tool. He doesn't need Nebraska, and we don't need him. No, at this point, yes, that's obviously true.
But I admire your viewpoint that you want to see him do well to hopefully.
I just hope he has some rehabilitation as a human.
Yes, some rehab would
not
be good.
Not that kind. Not that mental.
Allegedly.
Mental.
Oh.
Now, here's Nick from St. Louis.
Hi, Nick.
Who says...
Say hi to the mayor.
He won't be able to say Nebraska is where coaches go to die if Nebraska starts winning. That's true. Nebraska has a responsibility.
Boy, that would really help a lot of this.
It sure would.
All of you who don't want us to talk about this kind of thing, we wouldn't if Nebraska was winning.
Jesse says, Josh sounds like those crybaby fans that he himself mocks frequently.
That's true. No, I felt it when I was doing it.
Doc, Scott Frost would make a great politician. Everything that's wrong is everyone else's fault, but their own, even though they're the ones making the decisions.
I feel like his political viewpoints would play well in Wood River.
They play well in a lot of America, actually. From the 402, we all know where this is going to end up. Nebraska versus UCF in the Outback Bowl. People keep saying that.
Because it's going to happen, Connor.
Yeah.
This is Nebraska versus A&M in the tournament.
From the 402, quote,
402.
The Big Ten will have to adjust to us, clown. Well said. I get an email here on the Equitable Bank inbox from Adam.
Hi, Adam.
Ross' argument that he might not have had another opportunity like NU doesn't pass muster. Florida and Tennessee also wanted him at the time.
Ooh. Good memory. Also, he was with, now I know it was a low-level job, but he was in the National Football League last year.
That's right. No humility there. Joel writes in,
Hi, Joe.
Let's not forget if he didn't come to Nebraska, he would have been in Gainesville. I'm sure the sane SEC fans and media would have looked the other way on the same things that we did here in Nebraska. But,
Gators have a history of looking the other way on things.
But the thing is, there's just something toxic about those two entities. How does it work if he goes to Florida instead of UCF in 2017? I don't know. I can't say definitively that it would have failed. I cannot say that. But when these two things, Scott Frost and Nebraska, get together,
It was that fishbowl, man.
it gets hot fast.
Yeah. Like,
So I don't know. He would have had a lot of expectations, that's for sure, over at Florida or at Florida State or wherever he would have ended.
I don't mean this to be as morbid as it is, but he's kind of our Princess Di, where the Nebraska media just chased him and hounded him and hounded him and hounded him because we were infatuated with him and we drove him out.
He didn't start off on a good foot.
That's true.
Opening press conference, everybody's there, everybody's happy, and he's like, "Hey, if you talk to my family, I'll murder you," basically. And I'm like, "Whoa,
hey,
all right,
don't tell my wife what I'm doing.
Let's just chill out for a little bit, okay?" But that's the thing. He felt like he ran the show. He had all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And by about a year and a half, 2 years in, he had no answers. And it was at that point he was beaten. And he gave up. He quit. Then they fired him. A year after they should have fired him.
Yes.
We'll be back with Mitch Sherman after this on 1620 The Zone.